'Tis the season to shine with H&M. Discover the holiday collection and find fashionable pieces for your wardrobe or for under the tree. Get inspired and dazzle with this year's glam. From tuxedo styles, bow detailed pieces, impressive prints, and more. From unforgettable looks to unforgettable gifts. With fashion finds to home decor, find it all at H&M. Treat your loved ones and yourself this season. Shop in-store or at hm.com.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card, the credit card created by Apple. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that you can now choose to grow in a high-yield savings account that's built right into the Wallet app. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone and start growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility requirements. Savings accounts provided by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
The holidays are a time to feel and create joy. And what could be more joyous than the look on her face as she unwraps a stunning new jewelry piece from Blue Nile? How about getting 50% off your purchase? Blue Nile offers premium quality, priced below traditional retail. Their online experts are available 24/7 to answer any questions and make sure you've picked the perfect gift. For a limited time, you can get 50% off at BlueNile.com. That's 50% off at BlueNile.com.
Vaginas are absolute magic. And Ollie is here to give them the respect they deserve. That means shame-free supplements made with clinically studied ingredients to keep your pH in check and your pleasure a priority. Put yourself on top. Go to Ollie.com today. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome back to Keeping Current with Kansas City. This is Thad Bell from the Blue Testament. I have with me Daniel Sperry from the Kansas City Star. It's been a few days. Been a few days since we talked.
Yeah, been a few days since we talked. Enough has happened.
Yeah,
in the soccer world,
lots has happened. Let's just dive right in. I guess the NWSL and NWSL Players Association joint report was made public a few days ago. Kansas City was mentioned, and not all in a positive light, obviously. Otherwise it wouldn't be in the report.
Correct. I mean, I can find my article on kansascitystar.com. You can find Thad's article on his website about it. I mean, the report is what the report is. I want to highlight some key terms here. The fact that it was a concern. I don't know that there's anything in the report that ever says they were found guilty of it, much less in the same situations that happened in Orlando and Houston. I think was the idea of the retribution and stuff that was going on with Clarkson and whoever the coach was in Orlando before. And I apologize because there's so many of these things that we've had to deal with over the last few years that I just lose track of the names of coaches because they change. They've changed every single year.
It's a revolving door, man. It's like, it's hard to tell. So, and
so I do want to make note that it is a concern, that it was concerns. I think that's important here to note that it was a report by players that they didn't like the language that Hugh was using at them. You can read the report, you can read my article. I'm not going to go on here and start spewing all the stuff that was said by Hugh. I think there's a party of people on the internet that believe that's just good hard coach speak, and there's another party of people that are saying, but maybe we've gone too long with some harsher and more aggressive terms as good hard coach speak. So I think there's two parties here that are very vocal on either side of that. Players did not like that. They voiced it in a meeting to ownership. It got back to Hugh about who spoke up at that meeting about him. And I think at a point, multiple players had said to each other that they felt like they wouldn't be surprised if they got traded or moved. 6 players were reportedly, no names have been given out, 6 players reportedly stood up in that meeting and talked and directly addressed the Long family in that meeting. And 5 of those 6 were no longer on the roster the next season. However, when you are a last place team, as noted by both Angie and I'm sure Hugh did as well, when you're a last place team, a lot of changes get made regardless. That is going to happen when you are trying to become a better team. Change got made at the coach. I think, some of the remaining concerns that people have is the fact that if they, why did they remove him? And if there was this concern, why was he still in a position of power where he could potentially have input or, to the front office about players that were on the roster in that meeting, and they could have taken action. There are some interesting transactions that happened towards the end of his tenure officially as head coach before Cammie officially took over on January 14th as the GM and was in place at that point, as well as Matt Potter becoming the head coach as well, effective of those certain dates. So I have talked a lot here about it at this point, at least tried to spew out the basic facts, the basic ideas here. I personally, I think my biggest question is if Hugh was let go or was no longer a part of the club as of
November.
As of November, as we were told on the day that this report came out, and I asked Megan Burke, the NWSL Players Association president, on the press conference if she had felt comfortable with the idea of people who are named in this report as perpetrators of of whatever misconduct it may be, especially Hugh still being in a position of place where he coached the KC, the KC Current 2, as well as the had input into the roster and input in scouting decisions that were made to the front office to acquire players and stuff like that. Were they so comfortable with that, despite knowing what the concerns were, that were made by the current players? And she didn't want to speak directly to that point because I assume she already knew that Hugh was no longer there, which was news to me until I happened upon that information a little bit later in the day.
Same.
And as did apparently, I looked at it, Jonathan Tannenwald and I tweeted the exact same thing at the exact same time as well. So we're like, okay, apparently we're all hearing this from the maybe same people, same time, who knows, maybe. But it was the response was a reshuffling of the deck, and reshuffling of those who commit misconduct is not a way forward for a safer future. I agree with that statement. I don't know that safe in the terms of like physical and some of the really nasty parts of this report. Abuse, I don't think that obviously that didn't seem like it was a concern. It hasn't been raised as a concern at this point. So, safety in that aspect from Hugh doesn't totally add up, but I understand the statement that she's trying to make. So I think there's genuine questions that people have about the timeline of things, about how it was all handled in general. And I think for some people it is maybe taking the shine off of we're doing everything right, that the Current have continued to claim that they do. And I will say even the San Diego Wave have people in their decision making that were named in this report, including Jill Ellis. I mean, there's lots of people in this report that had maybe some issues and some oversights of theirs brought to light, and I think we will continue to see fallout from all of that in the coming days. I've tried to get answers about my questions about the timeline with you from the club, have not been responded to. So it's just one of those things that I understand the questions are out there for folks. We're doing our best to get to them, and if they get answered eventually one of these days, maybe we actually have more of a story to tell. But the report is what the report is at this moment, right?
Yeah, I need like 30 minutes to respond to everything you just said, man.
Sorry, man.
Gotta give you crap.
It's a lot. It's a lot of information.
I know. But all right. So I always want to be clear when I do these things and I talk about this. I have considered Hugh Williams a friend for a long time. So if I say anything, I try to be very cognizant of walking in the fine line that I'm trying to be objective when I talk about these things. So
sorry for my dryer buzzer going off in the background, folks.
I did not hear it. So anyway, when I talk about these things, I try to be, like I said, very objective and just straight as I can about it. The report obviously was, like you said, very disturbing. Again, there was so many things that were so very wrong that you almost want to like delineate the two between just some verbal stuff versus the uh, sexual misconduct, if we will say. Um, yeah, I know you just got back. The it's like you said, there was so much stuff that was in there. I almost want to delineate between the stuff that was like absolutely horrible sexual misconduct kind of thing versus some of the more verbal abuse kind of thing. And again, like I said, I've been a friend with you for a long time. I've watched him coached 100 different practices. I've never seen him act like what was supposedly said, or not what was supposedly said, but what was said in the report. I would say the most likely thing would have been these drills are done by my U14s or U12s, but I would have seen that more as the kind of dad, teasing you got to do better kind of thing, which may not apply to professionals, but that was his coaching style.
Yeah. And I also think too, like a lot of this stuff happened behind closed doors. I mean, people from the littler, you would say, quote, littler things to the worst things, they all happen behind closed doors, and I think it's one of those things too where maybe the delivery of the comment didn't come off how he thought he intended it to.
Right.
And I can't, and the hard part is I'm not there. I don't want to necessarily like defend it either. I just think that we have to take the report and what was reported by players to the NWSLPA at face value, and that absolutely has to be taken into consideration because they're the ones who are there on the receiving end of it and understanding it. I'll go back to a couple of comments too that I think were made. I'm working on a couple of articles throughout the year about just the general change that happened with the KC Current. There was a comment that was made from Kristen Hamilton about what it was asked. I asked her, what has been this resurgence, this goal scoring resurgence for you? Like, what's been attributing to it? How has the coaching staff done that? And she talked about the constant positive reinforcement from staff, and you're not getting yelled at, you're not getting screamed at. Now, Hamilton also played under Paul Riley as well in the Courage, so that's a background that happens as well. But if the report is what it is and says what it says, and I take Hamilton's words in there, I have to think, okay, maybe Hugh's words were a part of that too. And the positive reinforcement of action that is taken by this coaching staff now was seen for a lot of the players who are returning as such a breath of fresh air and a real added feel to the camaraderie of the team and why everybody was able to buy in and believe so hard in what they did. And so, every coach has his different coaching style. And like I said, I think we're also at a point where the coaching styles and a lot of people are going to have to adjust behavior, period, based on what's been going on in the NWSL and the NWSLPA. And it's going to there's going to be a level of behavior adjustment that's going to have to come from coaches as well, especially if you look at some of the stuff that the NWSLPA and the NWSL is trying to introduce in terms of worker rights and stuff like that, as far as going as far to have the CBA and bylaws in the league that protect players from retaliatory transactions and all that kind of stuff. As they do that and broaden that stroke of protection of the players, coaches are going to have to maybe adjust some things that have long been learned and long been patterns of who they were. And I don't want to compare Hugh necessarily to any of some of those who were really who had racial undertones to what they said, like Rory Dames and some of the abuse and stuff that was going on in Chicago with Artem. Sorry, Artem was the owner, but the head coach that was in Arnem was the owner, the former head coach in Chicago. The name escapes me. Like I said, folks, earlier, there's 1,000 names that have been popped up as coaches in the last 2 years who have, perpetrated misconduct and such. So,
plus it's a little late in the day, so we're
yeah, a little late in the day. So it's just one of those where coaches, those coaches got through almost whole lives and careers of coaching without ever having to learn and adjust behavior. And it boiled over into some very nasty things on either side for them. Same with Paul Riley. That was his way of trying to instill this competitiveness in them. But I even think, I'm going to take a quick MLS parallel. Gabriel Heinze was the head coach at Atlanta United, got booted for some mental abuse of players and borderline physical abuse of players, and some of the stuff that he was having them go through, withholding of water, withholding of certain things, comments he would make to people, how they conducted weight tests and stuff like that. I mean, it's a very old school way of thinking. And I think as we continue to humanize athletes and humanize those that are in those positions, we are at a point where we're really coaches and are the old school ways that were meant to instill this competitiveness and all this stuff that are, borderline military tactics, I think are going to go by the wayside. And because that is, it's sports, there's a way to do it with positive reinforcement and encouragement. I think Potter and his staff have shown the track record that it does freaking work when you act like that. I even think Vlatko's hard on players, but at the same time, and it has high expectations, but at the same time, the way we have seen and heard that he guides these players, there's a very respectful way of how he goes about it. And, I think that for the most part, that's it. I mean, it's going to really boil down to, the old school, those old school tactics are not going to work, because we're now valuing the player as a person much more so in how we protect them.
Which I agree with, which it still comes back to is why I was very surprised that it was reported that Hughes said these things, because I've seen him coach 100 different practices. He was coaching with Vlatko. I've seen him coach everything from little kids to NWSL professionals, and then he never acted in that sort of thing in any time that I ever saw him. And then add in a lot of different just conversations I've had with him about players. I'm going to go back to when the players had a meeting with the Longs. It's two things there. One is that it should not have gotten out of there who spoke up. It should not have at all.
100% correct.
And it sounded like a staff member and one of the Longs told Hugh that, but it should not have gotten out of there. But with everything that we've dealt with the Longs, I mean, we've talked to them plenty of times now and seen what they say and what they've done for the club. How much it's hard for me again to make these things add up of what they have said, what they have acted, and then saying, oh, we're just ignoring your concerns if they felt they were even remotely valid. You know what I mean? How does that add up?
Yeah. And again, I think I'll go back to, I don't want to take this. I hope this isn't taken as a shot against the Longs at all. Because I do think they are genuinely have the best interests of these players at heart. And the best intentions of how they want to operate and do everything. But at the same time, one, people make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And two, not everybody who is a public figure is who we think they are all the time. And I think, and that extends to all areas of life. And I think that's one of those things where we have to still be vigilant in how fans see things, and how we as reporters see things, from a journalistic standpoint. We have to be vigilant that we separate the relationships that form with people that we work very closely with on a regular basis, that is not always going to be reality. And that's how that, and so we have to be able to separate those relationships from that. And it's okay if to me, I think if the Longs made a mistake there, they made a mistake that they're going to learn from, and passing on that information. And I don't think it necessarily, I would hate to say it doesn't take away from it, but it does take a little bit of the shine off of, the stated intentions of the team here and there. And I think that's something I mentioned earlier, is that, that's going to be something that will be interesting to see how it unfolds over the next year, is, how do fans handle all of this, and take that in, and where do they go with it? Where do they channel these struggles in between them to, do they feel like that shine got taken off for them as well? And how do they handle, season tickets? How do they handle how much they want to get into going into stuff? I mean, it's a giant ripple effect. And you can ask some of the teams that had severe issues in the off seasons and stuff like that, like North Carolina, like Chicago, and how that has affected their fan base. I will say it's been really impressive in all of this to watch how Louisville's fan base, both the men and the women's team, have really rallied strong together as a community to really stand against their club. But that's their lifeblood, is that club there in Louisville. It's the only pro sports team that exists in Louisville. Yeah. And so they, Chicago, they lose their interest. They're out of it. North Carolina has plenty of other stuff that they can go. I mean, the North Carolina women's soccer team, I know they lost the national championship, but they're halfway to a pro team anyways, with the amount of prospects and the stud players that they have on that squad, and they play at the same dang field that the Courage do. So it's one of those things that I'm curious to see how it plays out over the next year. And like I said, I'm still trying to get answers on some of this stuff, and we'll see if we do, because I do know that there's a lot of questions that people have out there. So we'll see how it shakes out over the next year. But I think it needs to be noted in all of this, everybody's hands in what happened here from the top down. And I also think that we still have to take a look at what they're really trying to do. By all accounts, Matt Potter is a really genuine coach and a genuine guy who really cares about his players, both on the field and off the field. As he commonly states, that he cares about the human being more so, that if they're taken care of, then they'll be taken care of on the field. And we've seen that happen for a lot of players as well. So, and a lot of players have voiced the positive impact that have happened. I do think there's a lot of good people at the club that are in decision-making stands at the places now, that maybe weren't there in the beginning, and, are continuing to help the Longs achieve this player first goal, which does not include reports like what we saw, in that report. So I'd be curious how it all shakes out, but I know it'll take the shine off for a few people. That doesn't mean that the current aren't going in the right direction and making true strides and true progress in getting all that done.
It was also interesting that just after that time, the assistant coach, Ella Mazar, if I'm saying that terribly, probably, left with some interesting comments on an Instagram account, which led to even more questions, which will probably not be answered right away.
Yep, all of those. Ella announced on Instagram on Friday, and via Twitter, before the team has announced anything yet. She said she hoped the team would announce it this week, that she's no longer going to be on the assistant coaching staff. She had a whole bunch of comments about, how thankful she was for everybody that she encountered at the club. And one of her comments was for what's next. Well, first and foremost, to be respected and valued. And I thought that was interesting comment to come out in that same week. Again, as that alluded to, more questions now that we all have. But
it just leads to some questions about whether everybody is who we think they are.
Yeah,
I can't say any more about that right now. So
no.
All right. With again, like I've said, I've I've been a friend with you for a long time. I can't, make these things come out the way I've known him. But it also does mean that we needed to be critical and look into it. And, I say this, that I was a friend with you, not to like diminish anything he was accused of, but just so that everybody always knows that I'm trying to balance what I report versus what I know.
Mm-hmm.
Not just know him, but maybe some other things that I've been told that I've not at liberty to say, because
mm-hmm.
I also know that there were some players last year that were extremely thin-skinned, because I got contacted by one about something I said in a pod.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually being complimentary of the player, but she did not think I was being complimentary enough. So I just try to balance all of that from what I know. Going forward, though, let's. Is there anything more we want to say about this right now? Because I know we're a few days after the event.
At this point,
we've written about it.
At this point, until we have answers, we don't have much more to say.
Right. So let's do something positive. Well, let's do two things positive, actually. Two players were out of contract and have been re-signed. One being Haley Mace to, was it 3 years, 4 years? Through 2025, right?
Yep. Haley Mace 3 years, and Kate Del Fava.
She was already under contract for next year, actually, and
correct.
So it's just been a new 3-year contract, but that year was already included. And then Kate Del Fava for 2 years.
2 years through 2024. Yes, through the new stadium. So yeah, both great players. Both really had breakout seasons. Haley Mace a little bit more higher profile than Kate Del Fava had, but Kate Del Fava had one of the biggest moments of the year, scoring her first career goal in the 100th minute to knock off Houston Dash in the playoffs. Kate, Iron Woman, was the only player on the team to make an appearance in all regular season matches, and she made an appearance in every match from, I believe, the NWSL, the Challenge Cup semifinal, all the way through to the NWSL championship game, played in every single game there. So Kate really came into her own there too, when she got moved out as the right wing back after Mallory Weber. Sorry if I said it wrong. Mallory, just please. Mallory, yeah. After she went down with a torn ACL in the opening match of the year. I know they tried to do some other things, played Kristen Edmonds out there for a little bit too. Ultimately, the team got a lot better when both Haley Mace and Kate Del Fava were at right wing back, and Kristen Edmonds got moved back in as one of the third center backs. And they went on surprisingly, once those two really got locked in that position, they went on a 13-game unbeaten run. So very, very good players, and well-deserved contracts, and hopefully good pay raises as well, for what they do. And I think that's, for me, is a good sign of front office recognizing the talent that they have and making sure that they're properly paid. Yeah, compensated, valued. Yeah. All those.
Going back to what you were saying about Kate, she got that opportunity after Weber was injured, but it was also somebody else was out, which was when she got moved into that specific role. It was a little bit later after that she got more playing time when Weber was out, but she specifically moved into that role when somebody else was sick or injured, and she embraced it and just got better every game at it. Haley Mace is, she can play either side. She can play a true winger also. So she has that versatility. But right now, it just looks like they have essentially put all the pieces back together with one exception. Well, I'll say two exceptions. They have not added somebody on defense yet after losing Kristen Edmonds. And with Desiree Scott still out there as a free agent, and we don't really know what that status is, other than I know last time we both talked to him, it was, we're talking.
Yeah.
But I would actually be halfway okay with if they both I would be okay right now if this was the team that started with the draft picks additional also, but this is a pretty good looking team, especially with the return of Lynn Williams. Sam Mewis is still unknown, but with Vanessa DiBernardo and Morgan Gautreau, this is looking like a solid midfield.
Yeah, a very solid midfield. And to be honest, I mean, we have to think about the back line depth too. Addison Merrick can play as a center back in a back three, can play as a fullback as well. You have Alex Loera, who can play it as a 6 or as a center back. Not to mention, Elizabeth Ball there on top of it, and Jenna Weinbrenner, who started off really, really well and got injured and just didn't get back into the team because everyone else was playing so well ahead of her. So I think with the draft, they can add more young defenders. I'm sure they will. I don't know. Maybe they don't make another addition to the defense. Who knows? Do they make a trade eventually with all these draft picks? Again, who knows? That's a question maybe we'll have January 14th. But I think the roster's in really good shape, especially if everybody's healthy. The roster's in really good shape and ready to go. So I applaud them for keeping their key pieces. I applaud them for the good additions to the midfield. And we'll see if the additions to the midfield also help out the defense and keeping the ball a little bit more.
I am quite confident it will. One of the biggest weaknesses for the current last year was that they were a turnover machine. They would be 1 or 2 passes and then lose the ball quite often. And DiBernardo and Gautreau are both much better ball handlers, take better control of the ball, much more calm. So that build-up should be incredibly better and have more possession, which then takes a little edge off your defense.
Yep. Correct.
We'll just have to see how coach plays them, what formation he puts them in, who goes in what positions. And again, people still being healthy and hopefully recovering fully from their injuries. I have doubts. So, all right. What else do we need to chat about today, Mr. Sperry?
I think we're all covered, right? One parting thought. I really hope that the Women's World Cup just comes up and builds on the incredible momentum that the Men's World Cup generated, especially that final. There's a lot of great soccer that was played on the men's side over the last couple months, and we know that the women's side as well can play great soccer, and the Women's World Cup is just as entertaining. So I'm really hoping that momentum and that interest in the global game carries over for when the women are at the World Cup in New Zealand and Australia this coming summer in 2023. That's my Christmas wish. How's that? Since we're probably not going to pod until after Christmas. So
probably not unless we get bored.
Unless we get bored.
Yeah, which is going to be difficult the next few days. Although we might just sit home during a blizzard. We could just do pods for nothing. No, but talking about the World Cup, it's often been the Women's World Cup was more exciting than the Men's World Cup. And there's just as many, if not more, storylines. This one, the men's one in this one, though, is going to be hard to pass or even come close to equaling just because of the storylines of Argentina, France, Messi, Mbappe, so many other huge stars that are not going to get another World Cup.
Sophia Smith versus Putellas. That's going to be the storyline in New Zealand. I'm down for it.
Fair enough. We'll go with that. All right, man. Thanks for joining. Please.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Follow, like, whatever, comment, let us know, and see you later.